All right, Bert Breer. All right, let's figure this out together, man. This is a situation I can't recall anything like this really in a long time in pro coaching. So we just talked about Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels, head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, and before that, longtime offensive coordinator, whether he had the title or not, but longtime offensive coordinator with the New England Patriots in two different stints. Like when Charlie Weiss left New England in 2000, after the 2004 season, McDaniels was his replacement, even though McDaniels didn't have the title in 2005. But he was a coordinator.
Right.
And then he took that, he left, Billy O'Brien takes over. Billy O'Brien was the offensive coordinator, didn't have the title his first year, but he was the offensive coordinator. Yeah. He leaves. McDaniels now does have the title, coordinator. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know what the hell's going on in New England.
Yeah.
They've got Joe Judge. Mm-hmm. Joe Judge there. Joe Judge, the quarterback sneak from his own goal line. Joe Judge on 2 consecutive plays with the Giants late in his Giants career, his 2-year Giants career. Joe Judge is going to be working with skill position players and quarterbacks. Right. Matt Patricia is going to be the offensive line coach, but some offensive input. And is it Nick Caley? Is that his name, the tight ends coach?
Yep, tight ends coach, yep. Who was actually, blocked from going to the Raiders by the Patriots, but now doesn't seem to has an enhanced role, but I don't know that he's going to factor into the play calling. I mean, I think, we could get to week 1. Could Bill be calling the plays? I don't think that's off the table.
Whoa.
I just, this whole thing, and that's the thing. The most egregious thing about all of this, Michael, the most egregious thing about all of this is Mac Jones in year 2. This is a critical year for him. And you look at all the offensive staff from last year, right? The guys who built the offense for him and built it up, Josh McDaniels is gone. Carmen Brasillo, the offensive line coach, is gone. Mick Lombardi, the receivers coach, is gone. They had all these guys that were there that were part of building the offense for Mac Jones and developing Mac Jones, and those guys are gone. And now you're bringing in a couple guys who, what's their experience coaching on offense? Joe Judge has a season where he was split between receivers coach and special teams coach. And then Matt Patricia was a quality control guy who worked with Dante Scarnecchia 15 years ago. So how do you trust, I just don't understand why.
Okay.
Why you aren't bringing in somebody to work specifically with the quarterback.
That's the question.
Even if you want these guys, even if you want Joe Judge and Matt Patricia to be part of the play calling equation, still, why couldn't you find someone to work with Mac? That's my biggest question now. And, look, Bill will work with Mac. Joe's going to work with Mac. But that's a complicated position to play. And it still baffles me that, something didn't happen with Billy O'Brien. Because I actually think, Billy O'Brien would have wanted something to happen. But obviously we are where we are now. And there's just, a complete, I think, dearth of quarterback coaching experience on the roster at a critical time for your young quarterback.
Okay, all right. Now, let me try to be fair. Let me try. All right, so you tell me if this is plausible. So Bill Belichick, you don't become a 6-time Super Bowl champion, Bert, by doing things the way everybody else does them. So Bill Belichick was one of the first people in the draft to say, you know what? I'm going to move back. I'm going to move back in the draft. I'm going to get extra picks. You go ahead and move forward. Then everybody else started doing that. Bill Belichick was one of the first people to say, I think I want to have a dominant 2 tight end offense. That he was trying to do that in the 1990s. He was trying to get Kyle Brady from Penn State.
Yep.
He wanted to draft him 10th overall, which would have been overdrafted. Yeah, he did. He wanted him. And when the Jets took him, he was pissed. So he's always been fascinated with, 2 tight ends. Another thing Bill Belichick did, one of the first people to do it, the prevalence of the slot receiver in today's game, the Patriots were doing that before everybody else.
It was Troy Brown.
That was That was a tent pole of their offense. Troy Brown to Wes Welker, Wes Welker to Julian Edelman. That was their thing. So he's always been kind of forward thinking in some ways. He's so far ahead, I can't figure this out. Is there any benefit to structuring a staff like this where you don't name an O coordinator or a D coordinator? We're focused on the offense, but they don't have a defensive coordinator either.
I mean, and that's the thing is,
what do you think what's he? As they say in England, what's he playing at? What's he trying to do?
So look, like if you have a guy who's like, say like it's just Matt Patricia, right? Like, and you have Matt Patricia like being one of the guys that touches the quarterback, then I could see the logic in it, right? Like then I could say, okay, like he's trying to give Mac like some defensive perspective. He's trying to sort of help him understand what teams are throwing at him. That's fine. But it's like when the whole staff looks that way, like when are we moving the tight ends coach over to help out? We're bringing the special teams coach back after he was a head coach somewhere else. We've got like our old defensive coordinator back after he was a head coach somewhere else. It's the totality of it, Michael, that it's hard to wrap your head around, like, especially when you look at like the way they were able to get Mac going as a rookie last year and getting him playing at the level that he played at. A lot went into that. And so now you want to build on that. And how do you build on that? Well, you build on that with some continuity around him. And instead of, maybe bringing back somebody who has background in the system to help the quarterback out, you're bringing back guys that don't have experience on the offensive side of the ball at all. And again, it's like a big dice roll. And I understand what you're saying, but you respect Andy Reid, right?
Right.
Did you know that something like this undid Andy Reid in Philadelphia?
So, and you wrote about this, right?
Almost identical.
The dream team. It was a dream team.
The dream team. So it was the dream team in 2000. Yeah, in 2011 when they brought in Nnamdi Asomugha. And Vince Young was actually the one who actually said dream team, right? Which, like, he was the backup quarterback. But, so, what happened that year, they brought in Jim Washburn, who was, like, the highly respected defensive line coach from Tennessee. And, it was a big get for them. The only reason he was available was because Jeff Fisher had gotten fired there. So they go get Jim Washburn, a huge get for them. And because Jim Washburn's already there and has an idea of how he wants to do things, it becomes harder for them to find a defensive coordinator. The defensive coordinator they fired was actually Sean McDermott, who then went to Carolina, and everybody knows where he is now. And so
wait a minute. Hold on a second. Wait a minute. They fired, going into that year, they fired McDermott?
They fired McDermott, yeah.
Why?
They fired McDermott because, they had fallen off. McDermott had been groomed to be the next DC after Jim Johnson. Jim Johnson retires, and McDermott takes the reins, and the defense had slipped a little bit. And so they wind up firing McDermott. They fired McDermott coming out of 10, and then they bring in Jim Washburn as sort of the centerpiece of their new defensive staff. And let's get creative then and do something different around Jim Washburn, who's going to be the crown jewel of our new defensive staff because of everything he did for all those defensive linemen, through all those years, in Tennessee. And so they bring over their offensive line coach, Juan Castillo, who I feel bad for Juan because he was so well respected. He was like the Scarnecchia of Philly, right? And they bring him over to be defensive coordinator. It was a disaster. He didn't have any background on coaching on defense. Nnamdi Asomugha was a mess, who was their big ticket defensive, addition. It wound up eroding the trust that the organization had in Andy Reid, who had been there forever. He winds up firing him after 11, but by then the questions about Andy's longevity, his job security in Philadelphia had already started. And you know the way it is. Once that ball starts rolling downhill, it's hard to stop it. And so I think it's very easy to make the argument that the decision to go and put your offensive line coach in as the defensive coordinator in Philadelphia was what did Andy Reid in. It's the reason why the Eagles wound up firing him after the 12 season.
Well, I guess there's a lot to pull from that story. One, and you know this, but maybe a lot of people don't. Andy Reid and Bill Belichick are very close.
Yep.
They're very close. All right. I mean, so one year they made a trade just because they wanted to keep the streak going of making trades.
Yeah.
So they just made a trade, like a random nothing trade, like two boys, like, hey, all right, I'll trade you like a seventh for a seventh, just something stupid. So they're very close. And I wonder, just hearing you describe this, I wonder if Andy Reid said something like, hey, it could work, but if I had to do it again, I would switch this. Or it could have worked if I hadn't done this one thing. I don't know. That's one. But here's the other thing. It did turn out, if you look at it, it was a disaster at the time. The 2011 season for Philadelphia, it was no dream team. It wasn't. They were 8-8.
Yeah.
In the old 16-game world, they were 8-8. But think about, Bert, this is very serious. I want you to consider how things turned out for some other members of that team. Nnamdi Asomugha wound up marrying Kerry Washington. It worked out for him. Okay. Kerry Washington. He married Kerry Washington. Good.
Yeah.
Sean McDermott, deposed Sean McDermott. Now look at him. Probably he's got the best roster in the league. Oh, right up there, the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
It even worked out for Andy Reid. Went to Kansas City, got fired.
Yep.
Went to Kansas City. Got a great roster. Brett Veach was there too. Brett Veach winds up being a general manager. Worked out for Howie Roseman. He's still there. He's in control in Philadelphia. So I think
Doug Peterson was on that staff. Doug Peterson gets fired, goes with Andy to Kansas City to be his offensive coordinator, then winds up coming back to Philly as the head coach and wins the Super Bowl. And Vince Young is the king of, and Vince Young is the king of Austin, Texas now.
Well, this is what you're telling me. This thing is going to implode on the New England Patriots, but the implosion is not going to be a deal breaker. People will wind up in different places. It's going to be good. It's going to be good for their careers. I think that's what we're going to get. But do you think this is an ego, just like an ego trip for Bill Belichick, that he's always has he always seen himself as a play caller? Like what's up with that?
I think it's so, like, the biggest criticism I have of this is I think the decisions that Bill's made over the last 6 months have been so based on who's a flight risk and who isn't, because he's sick of having to replace people. And so I think a big reason Elliott Wolf isn't in the number one chair in personnel right now rather than Matt Groh is because Elliott Wolf interviewed for the Vikings job, the Bears job, and Bill's looking at it and saying, do I have to replace Elliott Wolf in a year if I promote him? Billy O'Brien, maybe the same thing. Billy O'Brien, if I bring him back from Alabama, then do I have to replace him in a year because he's running off to, say, Michigan to be the head coach, right? So I think that's a significant piece of why this has happened this way.
Come on, let people be great.
I think that,
let them be great.
And I think that's horrible logic. Like, look at Sean McVay with the Rams, right? They lose guys every year. There are guys who are only there for a year or two. He doesn't care because he knows, he's going to wind up, people are going to come through there, do a great job for them.
That's right.
If they get more opportunities, that means things are going great for me. And you know what? If other people see these guys getting great opportunities, everyone else is going to want to work for me too, right?
That's
so now
right.
People are lining up. People are lining up to work in L.A. for the Rams. And I just think the logic of it has to be inside the family, and we can't teach anybody else how to do this. And if they don't come up from the grassroots level, then we're not going to have them here. I mean, I think Raheem Morris is a great example, right? So when Sean brought in Brandon Staley, one of the main reasons he did that in 2020 was because he thought Vic Fangio's defense was the most difficult defense to play against in the NFL. It was the one that had given him the most trouble. So he brings in Brandon Staley. They have the number one defense in the NFL. Brandon Staley's gone after a year to the Chargers. So Sean goes and pulls on his connections, and he's great friends with Raheem Morris, and he brings Raheem Morris in. But instead of asking Raheem Morris to run the system that he'd run in the past, hey, to make it easier on the players, would you learn Vic Fangio's defense and kind of continue to build on some of the things that we built on before? I know you're a really good defensive coach. This is maybe a chance for you to build up some new muscles, and in the process, we'll be able to interject your ideas into what we're already doing. And look what happened. And now Raheem's probably going to be a head coach in a year, right? And I just think having that sort of system where you've got guys going through and achieving things, and people want to work there. We talked about that with the thing with Josh, right? Like where people know if I come here for a year or two, I could have great opportunities. And you know how you create those great opportunities? By benefiting Sean McVay, right? Like, so I mean, like, if it doesn't work, those guys are still going to be with you for the wrong reasons. You know what I mean? Like, those guys are still going to be with you because it's not working.
And the thing is, you know, look, if it's Bill Belichick, it's Bill Belichick. You're going to have people, you still have players who don't even know about your Giants days. Some players don't even remember the early Patriots days who just look at you and say, I want to play for him. You got coaches who want to be led by him. You're not going to struggle to find people who want to kind of sit at the feet of the genius and say, all right, I'll do it. And he should look forward to that. He's always going to have the top pick. Now, we'll get into this later because I want you to talk some basketball. I'm gonna I know you're excited to talk hoops after talking football all the time.
Yeah.
But someone that we both know very well, Mike Felger, always says, and Boston talk radio host, always says this is financially driven. Says the Patriots are doing this because they don't want to pay. Now that's
somebody else
really
is
bad
the
reason.
bill.
They don't want to pay a big-time offensive coordinator. Hey, thanks for watching Brother from Another on YouTube. Make sure you hit subscribe before you leave, and be sure to watch us 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Peacock. Appreciate you.